Hey, Marc Warnke here. They call me the Goat Guy. I'm the founder of the Lifesteading movement. It's winter time here on Kimberlite Ranch. I'm looking out at the snow all around us, and it gets cold. I'm in Boise, Idaho, and doing chores during the winter is the harder part. Summer is so much easier. I want to talk to you about like the gear that I use. I've been in the backcountry so much in my life. I've worn tons of expedition style hiking, backpacking, and hunting gear. Own Sitka, QU, Cryptic, First Light, all the really super in-depth gear that's made for comfort and flexibility and layerings and everything else. And the models that I use there are different, but I applied a lot of those things to here. And now that I'm through my second winter on a larger style ranch, I feel like I have some valuable input for you as we're going into the Christmas season or close, depending on when we release this video, on potential gifts to get people you love, which you can do year round, so it's still relevant. Also for yourself, making better qualified decisions, because I'm spendthrifty and I make good decisions to not spend stupid money on things that I don't have to, and good money when I do. And I feel like I make good decisions there. So I kind of want to pass that stuff along. So let's start off with chore boots. I find that because of the chaff of working with hay and the fact that we're often in mud and it's cold and we don't want to track that in, having chore boots that stay outside in a mud room or are transitioned into our indoor boots because of the poop and things like that, having chore boots is a kind of a must in my world. I've had these for a couple of years now, I think 3, and they're bogs. I've owned about 5 or 6 of these. I have found bogs to be more expensive and worth the money. I think there are other brands out there. I haven't had as good a luck with them in terms of their longevity, how they pull on. Usually a lot of times the breakdown in these boots or the method that you pull them on, that ends up wearing out on the back. I have another pair that I got at Cabela's where, the heel ended up blowing out because, pulling them on over and they wear on the back. So I do like those, and I do like the insulated boots. Now I have the next level as well. I have some 1,800 gram or 2,000 gram big Mickey Mouse boots that I wear when I'm steelheading. If it were super cold and I were to be working outside a long period of time, which chores usually aren't a long period of time of working outside, usually they're intermittent. And most of our outside projects in the ranching and farming world happen during the milder months, not during the peak. So I don't know if getting a huge amount of insulation is worth it, because the more insulation you get, the heavier and the more cumbersome kind of ski booty and wider they get really Mickey Mousey in terms of the size of the boot. So I'd recommend a good insulated boot like that 400, maybe 600, but anything greater than that, that's gonna start having diminishing returns in my opinion. I also do always buy these a little bit large, like a half size large, so that I have room for a big pair of socks if I want to layer up internally. So that's something to consider as well. Now, I've always really enjoyed my low ones as like my city winter stuff. And I like slip on, slip off boots. I don't like messing, especially during the winter, with something I have to tie up because it's always wet and get your gloves wet. And I just don't like that process. And it's just having tie up boots during the winter is never super fun. If you're going to be walking mountains and hunting and doing that kind of thing, you have to, because you need a boot like that. But for chores and those sorts of things, you just don't. So I do recommend a slip on as well. 2 things I want to say. One of the things that I will tell you that I'm beginning to evolve into after all the years of doing this is I would choose this boot over this boot to do chores in. Now, what's the reasoning? The reasoning are twofold. Number one is there's not that much warmth that comes from this. Now, the only time I would choose this boot over this boot is because I was in something so deep that I was being concerned that the poo or the mud or the slop would overtake these and go down my boot. So if I were working in a cattle yard during the winter when the poo mud is this deep with liquid, then I would go with these. But I'm not in that environment. I raise goats, And we're dealing more with frozen stuff or melting snow stuff or mild mud stuff, because goats don't make that big frothy mud like a cow does, then I would always go with these. And here's why. This doesn't lend itself towards warmth. And what it does lend itself towards is the pain in the butt of the fact that trying to put these on the outside, creating a shingling effect, is almost impossible unless you have, because they're so big and they're so high. So you sit here and fight trying to get these over the top of them. And this is going to be the way I want to wear this boot, because then the number one thing that happens to me is that if I wear it like I showed you just now, then what happens is invariably I end up with hay chaff that gets down my boot, stacks up around my ankles. And so then number one, I got socks with itchy chaff in them. And number two, when I pull these off, wherever I pull them off, there's chaff on the floor. So I'm always trying to wipe my socks off and stuff outside when it's cold, when I want to be inside. And these boots end up becoming more cumbersome. They're harder to put on. This doesn't lend warmth. It makes doing this more difficult. And so this is why I'm personally going to, see, there's chaff on the inside of them right now from the last time I wore them. And that's why I would go to this boot. Now these boots are more difficult to get in the insulation factor of these. So if I was gonna go with insulation and warmth and depth, I would go here. I personally choose both. I majority of the time wear these though, because the pull-on method is simpler. So it's just a one hand through the loop and I'm on, and that's the tuck in. So it's just that simple, and they ride nice and low, and you still get the same level of everything going on. These are also bogs, by the way. So I really do like this style of boot better. So there's the boots. The other thing is, when we're talking coats, I kind of have 3 chore coats. I really like a fleecy coat because they do a better job of absorbing moisture, but this is super crappy to do chores in because, again, if you're feeding hay, you get hay chaff all over this and then you track the chaff into the house. So I never wear these for chores, but I do wear them for like projects. Anything that involves things that don't have hay, I really like a fleece, and I have lots of different versions of this. And then I really like when they put pockets in them, because then I have somewhere to warm my hands. Because if I don't have to wear gloves, I don't wear gloves, because I hate having to pull gloves off as often as they have to be pulled off while you're doing work. Now the gloves that have been proven time and time again to be my favorite are 2 pairs. Actually, bear with me, I'll be right back because I gotta show you the other pair. These are the 2 pairs that I like of gloves. These are kind of your quote unquote cheaper Home Depot gloves, but I bet you I've tried $150 in different gloves to arrive at these as my favorite in the current Home Depot. They say firm grip and they say trade master. I have found that the leather sticks together nicely. I love the fact that they have this soft thing right here. If you're wondering why I love it, is because I can wipe my nose on it. And not get a chafed nose, which always happens with gloves. And they're just warm enough that they insulate my hands, but they're just not warm enough by being bulky where I'm not always pulling them off. And they have a nice Velcro way that they can be tight around my cuff, but when I just want to pull them off, I still can without undoing that, which is a simpler step process of, I can literally take this glove and do the thing that I always have to do, which is I'm working on something, this hand's occupied, I need this glove off, and I just do that, and then I'm working again, right? So I really like these gloves at Home Depot. They're super handy. For when it's crazy cold, I've worn these, and this is a ski glove, and it's made by Kombi, K-O-M-B-I, and it's a leather ski glove. Now, do you see how dark it is? It's because every season, a couple of times a season, I grease these up just like a good pair of boots. And I am not kidding you, these gloves are 20 years old. So they're 20 years old. And I've been doing chores and fencing and wintertime work with them for 20 years. And if you got a chance to feel these, they're soft and supple and beautiful, and they're warm as hell. They're super thick. And the other facet I like about these is and these I always have to pull off if I'm working on something small, but the way the cuff design works, again, it just comes off really simple. In fact, these are the kind of gloves that I can do that with, which I really like, because that allows me to quickly take care of something, throw my glove on the ground, take care of it. Like if I'm handling an animal, I need to just quickly get my glove off. I really like these. I think, if I remember right, these were originally made, and they still make them today, as like a cross-country ski glove. I think that's what they were made for. So those are the gloves that I've arrived at after, I don't know how many pairs I've tried. So that's my glove model. Now, when I'm doing chores, I'm a big fan of puffy, because I want to be flexible, I want to be light, and I want to be warm. And I also want to be able to quickly pull it off, because if you follow me much on my YouTube videos or online, I am a sweaty bastard. I sweat like a dog. So I'm somebody who always has to pull layers off all the time. I mean, it's one of the problems on this ranch. My clothes are everywhere on this ranch. And for those of you people who are like, why has Mark always got his shirt off? And that's because I'm always drenched with sweat, and I hate a wet shirt and the feel of that during the summer. So I just go shirtless. I also believe that we were intended to get sun naturally as human beings, and I'm not scared of, I'm not a big sunscreen guy, and I'm smart about it. I do things when the peak sun is, I wear sunscreen and I cover up and those sorts of things. But when the sun's not intense and I'm hot, my shirt's off, and it's because I'm sweating. This layer, and here's an area where you're dumb to spend a lot of money. They make a jillion good puffy coats, and a freaking Cabela's bottom of the line Chinese made is just as good as the North Face, because especially with chores, they always get grease. I mean, look at the level of dirtiness along this coat. I actually bought this coat used at a ski surplus store here in town that redoes ski gear, and it's an REI. I guarantee you this coat new was $170. I paid like $20 for it. So these kind of things I just consider as being disposable. And when they wear out, I throw them away and I don't worry about it. They rip. By the way, if you want to seal these or you want to fix a rip in a puffy coat, they make a material out there called tenacious tape. And tenacious tape has a flexibility. If you actually just look at it on Amazon, it's very cheap. It's a flexible tape that's sticky like no stick ever. And you tear these coats, you can just put a little circular patch of clear tenacious tape on there, and it just literally fixed it. I fix sleeping bags with tenacious tape. It goes with me in the backcountry, so I highly recommend it. But puffies, I always want a super, super light puffy and a little bit heavier puffy. And then I got my big job giant, I'm a marshmallow puffy. And that one happens to be down, but I don't recommend that you go with down puffies for chore coats and ranch coats, primarily for the reason that when down gets wet, it loses its insulative factor, where artificial fillers or Primaloft or those sorts of things, the artificial puffy materials, they still stay warm when wet. So I highly recommend that you use the artificial fillers and coats that do that. They're cheaper, they're more affordable, they're more effective than down itself. And I recommend that you have 3 different layers: a very light, a medium, and a crazy heavy giant puffy that's just ridiculous, like 800 fill. I wear that one every now and then, but you can very rarely actually do work in it. It's usually just trying to be comfortable in fairly sedentary chores. So sometimes I'll wear that big puffy and this, and when I get hot, I pull the big puffy off and this does me fine. And then I'm consistently using as my heating ballast a hat. And we make some really good beanies on PackGoats.com. They have our label on them. I'm a beanie guy because I got a bald head. I will tell you that until you live life with a bald head, you don't realize how much thermal gain or thermal loss your head participates in. It is an unbelievable amount how much you can ventilate yourself by just literally taking your hat off. So take your hat off, open your coat, take your gloves off. You'll be amazed at how much you can cool down without having to shed a layer. And you always want to do it proactively. The second you start feeling yourself hot, start pulling off gloves and hats and opening your coat, and then you'll stabilize. But if you get clear to the point where you get sweaty, then your under layers are wet and you're more prone to get cold and lots of stuff there. So beanies are a really critical part, and it's super easy to pull this layer off, stuff it in a pocket, and then you're back in action. The last two things I want to speak to is insulated pants. I absolutely love them. I wear them all winter long. These happen to be Carhartts. They're usually in the $70 range. This particular pair I believe I've had for 5 or 6 years, and I wear them all winter long. This is another pair. I did not get as good a look out of these. These are Bernies. I find that this kind of thick canvasy outer layer works really nicely in an insulated pant, and 99.9% of the time I can get away with it. I do want to mention there is a soft shell pant that you can find on Amazon that is like 35 bucks, and it's really stretchy material and it's really nice. So when it's wet and it's snowy outside, that's kind of my go-to pant, is more as a soft shell style. It's not quite neoprene, it's a different style material, but in the industry they refer to it as a soft shell. So it's stretchy, it's very water resistant, it's all artificial materials, so it stays very dry, and it's insulative because it has thickness. The last thing that I want to speak to is Trisha's go-to. Trisha really likes these coveralls. Now, you couldn't get me to wear a pair of coveralls if my life depended on it, because they're so restrictive and you cannot unlayer in them at all. The reason she likes it is because she doesn't like any form of chaff on her entire body, and she loves that she can pull this on, keep it all outside, not dirty up her stuff. And I understand it's sound thinking, but I do think it's limited in its ability. But I respect Trisha and how she thinks about things, and so I wanted to mention that as well. One last thing I did want to say with these is that usually on my light layer and my mid layer, I really still like having a hood alternative. This one doesn't. I have another one that does, but this one does, and hoods can come in super handy to be that additional source if you need it for the warmth, or if you're getting rained on or snowed on or whatever. I'm just not a big hood guy because, again, you can't see as well out your periphery. I always end up sweating with a hood on unless I'm doing something 100% sedentary. I'm not a giant hood guy, but it's nice to pull it on when you need it, when the wind's blowing or it's really getting bad. Hoods can be super handy to have around. And then the last thing I want to speak to you about is on me all the time is a super tool. Now this one is the Leatherman, I believe it's called the Wingman. The reason I like this one the most of all the super tools out there, I used to carry the Spyderco super tool and I actually really like that, but now they don't manufacture a good one anymore. But the Wingman, the reason I like it primarily is that no tool is good if you don't have it. And the only way I can keep a Leatherman on me, because I'm not a big belt and tool belt guy, I don't want to wear that shit, it's, again, extra stuff I want to carry, is this little bugger right here. The fact that this has a pocket clip, the fact that it's small enough not to be a pain in the butt in my pocket, and it's always right here, makes it a super valuable tool because I use it. The other thing, the key on this, is the one-hand opener. So now, because I have a one-hand opener, I don't have to get into the tool. It's right there. I can cut my hay bales with it. Knives get used constantly on the ranch, and that's really important. It's also a one-hand closer, so you press here, press with your finger, one-hand closer. I like that. The other thing that it has that's super valuable is scissors. Scissors are super important. It also has your screwdriver and your Phillips head, and you know, the old days of the bottle opener, which is just funny because I don't know how many people actually use those anymore. But the scissors are super, super handy as well, and they actually function super well. They're like crazy sharp, and they really do well. Like I've used these a lot when in the backcountry when I'm cutting like athletic tape to help people with blister care in the backcountry and that sort of thing. And I like that they have the scissors. So this one I really like. My clue on this is I never buy these new. I always, and because I have a tendency to lose these, I'll buy them 3 at a time. And there is a pawn shop here in Boise that buys surplus knives from the FFA when you go through airports and you get caught with a knife in your pocket and you throw it in the bin. They actually collect all those and sell them in bulk to different people. And you can actually find sources to find just tons of this stuff used. I think new, these things are 70 or 80 bucks, and used they're like $20. So at $20, you know, I don't have to sit there and be all super bummed out about it when I usually go through, I've had 3 now for 4 or 5 years, and this is my last one. I've lost 2, I don't know where they are. Here's my last one, but pretty good value of 60 bucks out of 4 years of a tool in my pocket that I use pretty much every day. So that's kind of like opening up my, you know, my strategy for chores in both clothing, material, boots, the way I think about it. If you like videos like this, you know, click to subscribe, share it with your friends. You know, do us the honor of doing business with us at PackGoats.com. We have a lot of fun things, not only for PackGoats, but for goats in general, even things like cups and mugs and hats. If you appreciate the business or the information and the free will, you know, do us the favor of, you know, helping us out where you can as well by doing business with us. Don't forget, we do have a course structure for how to raise baby goats. We have a membership. Goats are our expertise. And then we also are the founders of the Lifesteading movement. And it's a movement that's circulated around the idea that owning land is a holistic look. And we have and pull in experts, and we house events right here on the ranch where you can come in and come to a Lifesteading event and learn from other experts on off-grid, experts on prepping, experts on forage, experts on goats, chickens. And we pull in some really, really high-level expertise, and the courses are well worth it, both online and in person. So please do us the favor of doing business with you when you can, and I appreciate you very much, and I hope you have a great day.